over time, doing plays, working with amazing people, I've loved acting.
Recording in progress.
What other interests did you have in addition to acting?
This was one of my weaknesses, is that I only had one other interest, which was when we lived upstate in New York, we lived on a mountain, and I had a dirt bike, a motorcycle, and I rode that thing everywhere. And that was it. That was the thing that I loved, And when we moved back to the city, of course, you can't ride it there. When we lived in LA, I did get another dirt bike, and you can ride up above LA in a place called Gorman. And so I was riding up there and stuff. But to be honest with you, aside from that, I never developed like other hobbies. My younger son is great for getting me to play board games with him, or just do those kind of normal things. I was not normal in that way. I was 100% in on acting, and the only other thing that I knew was riding motorcycles, and that was it. And so that really was a weakness, because there were many times in my life, where people were like, well, what's your hobby, what do you like to do when you're not, and I was like, I didn't have anything. I just wanted the art form. I just wanted to go to the museum and look at the old paintings. For years, for decades and decades. And so now that I'm older, um, I'm able to hang back a little bit and start to learn other things. But acting was it. Because my father had died so young and my mother had been an actress, and we never really had a lot of money. And then and I had grown up, watching my mother's rehearsals when she would do plays. I just grew up around actors and actresses. That was the world that I grew up in. Um, and so in Manhattan Plaza at that time, you had to be an artist to live there. And so it was subsidized housing. And so that meant it was only actors, musicians. It was like performing arts. It was like dancers, professional dancers. Like, you had to be a professional. So I was constantly around these kind of people all the time. So all I wanted to do was grow up as fast as I could to do plays, do productions. And so, getting to work with Steppenwolf, or getting to work at the Actor Studio, or getting to work with Mike Nichols, or some of the people, Christopher Walken, that I've gotten to work with, was truly amazing. But I was never much interested in anything else. And I would have said that very proudly 20 years ago. But at my age, I would just say it's healthier, and I encourage people to develop hobbies, just other things that you do, so you're not just obsessing about it all the time.
That is inspiring, though, sir. I must say.
Good.
Um, I was wondering, could you name one of your favorite songs from when you were a high school student, and why did you love it?
Well, we listen to a lot of music. So a lot of the music we listened to was music that my mother also had the vinyl in our house. So we listened to a lot of Led Zeppelin. We listened to Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Joni Mitchell, Moody Blues, Jimi Hendrix, all those kind of things.
And so, speaking of the Broadway shows that you'd mentioned, what was one of your favorite Broadway shows, and why did it speak to you?
To be honest, The Elephant Man was truly incredible. Philip Anglum played the Elephant Man with no prosthetics. And then after seeing that, then I got to see David Bowie do it.
Whoa.
And so he took over the role. Um, and I wish I still had the interview with Philip Anglum, because I got to ask him all of these great questions, but I don't have it anymore. But that was incredible. There was very little on stage. It wasn't very it was just kept very simple. I loved that. So, but I do think off Broadway, the first time that I saw Orphans, which was the Steppenwolf production that I got to then replace Kevin Anderson in, the first time that I saw that, I couldn't even get up out of my seat. It just killed me. It was so powerful. And you can see these plays up at Lincoln Center. They have them all on video. Well, it used to be video. They're all probably digitized now. But you can go up and see those productions. Also, I didn't get to see True West, which I really wanted to see from Steppenwolf, but Balm and Gilead from Steppenwolf, that just completely blew me out of the water. So you can see these productions still at the Lincoln Center Library on 66th Street. And even if you are not a New Yorker, the New York Public Library does give you a form you can fill out that if you're just there for a day or if you're a few days, that you can still have a pass to go do it.
Oh, I'm gonna have to do that. That's great.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you took over the role in Orphans. What was that like, taking over a role for an actor that you'd already seen do the show?
That was hard because he was absolutely brilliant. He's Kevin Anderson is, just, an absolute, he's brilliant. And so I had to find a way to try to make it my own. I don't know that I ever really did because you had to hit these cues. You had to hit certain things that he had found.
Mhm.
And so that was always the struggle. But I know to get the role, he was so physical in the role. He had been like a cat, like a wild cat, that they had rehearsed that way for a while. And so I thought when I was living upstate, I was doing gymnastics. So what I did was I got I went to my mother's apartment, who was a block away from the theater, and I started to practice because he would run across the stage, but run up on the back of the couch. So he'd run across like a cat.
Oh, well,
So what I decided to do was to try to impress them and get their attention, have some kind of hook. So, which I don't always recommend doing, to go out of your way to have a hook. But this was just such a big deal that I practiced running up on across the room, up on top of the back of the sofa, and doing a full split and landing and continuing the scene. And so I practiced that over and over and over and over. And so when my audition came, that's what I did. I was on stage on one side of the stage and I went running just like he did. And I ran across the back of the couch just like he did. And I flipped in midair and I could hear the auditioners go, and I landed and finished the scene,
whoa,
without missing a beat. So I knew when I heard them go, that I had their attention.
man. Oh, that's great. And so speaking of that, because I'm gonna name a few of the projects and people you worked with over the years. But before I start, I actually want to say it's funny. I was doing some research before this, and you've worked with so many people on so many projects. I think you may actually rival Kevin Bacon with the 6 Degrees of Separation game.
Oh my gosh.
And this is a small sample, but I could honestly do this all day. So I was wondering, what are the first things that come to mind when you hear ABC after school specials, or Gary Sinise and working on Orphans, or one of my personal favorites, Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning, or working with Sophia Loren, or Neil Simon, or Mike Nichols, or How I Got into College, or 30-something, Flying Blind, or Sun Records. Like, how are those experiences different? Were they different? What stood out the most to you?
Well, ABC after school specials were just, I was a kid, so it was great to be working.
I didn't know. I mean, you didn't tell me you were going to keep the baby?
I changed my mind. My parents would kill me if they knew you were here.
It's my baby, too.
I met other actors my age that way, so that was a very positive experience. Um, let's see, Friday the 13th was we shot that up above Coldwater Canyon.
What you doing up there, Vinny? Rudy, 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 Rudy. Rat-tat-tat-tat-too-ings. Woo! All right.
middle of the night. It was pretty spooky. I remember the director asking me if I could start singing a song or something. He felt like it was too quiet in the scene there, so I started singing um, Tutti Frutti on Rudy, and he said he liked it, but we don't have the rights to the song, so I would have to make up my own lyrics. And so that was how I found this song, which is basically that, but I was just making up silly lyrics and stuff, based on the relationship with my friend who actually was a friend of mine from New York. Sophia Loren was just like, a goddess. She was a wonderful, wonderful human being. She liked to have her family around. She liked to have her sons around, and so she often had them around. Different people learn what they need to work on set. When her sons were not available, then she would have me. Then I was playing her son, so I would follow her everywhere she went and go into her trailer and just be, her little puppy, and so that she felt, family, family, family. I don't remember the other ones. You mean?
Oh, so Neil Simon and Mike Nichols were two of the other.
Well, Neil Simon and Mike Nichols, they were very. I was very happy grateful to work with them. Mike Nichols was one of those very rare directors who just really supports, excuse me, supports the actor. And he's not didactic or anything. He's not authoritarian. He wants your creativity. And so he was always very encouraging and very gentle, always a gentleman. And he used to have Universal. He was, he loved film. He was a cinephile. So he would have Universal send prints, film prints of some of his favorite old black and white movies, and with along with a projector. And so he would have screenings for us Sunday nights or Saturday nights and talk to us about the movie. And so he was just a lot of love of the work, love of film, love of actors. He loved actors. So Neil Simon I got to work with twice, and the second time I got to play him. And I just remember talking to him at one point where I felt like I wasn't being funny. I was scared I wasn't going to be funny. And he took me for a walk and he said, I don't want you focused on trying to be funny. I want you focused on the relationship, being honest and really talking to the other actor. And then he told me other stories about how his parents used to fight, and how his mother took him out to catch the father having the affair, and that was a nightmare situation, and he was just a little boy, and so he would tell me things just to get me into character, to understand what he grew up with. People who are very funny, there's a tendency that they can have, that they actually grew up with a lot of pain, and the comedy becomes a way to not have to feel that, keep everybody happy.
Excellent. And what was it like working on How I Got Into College?
How I got into college was, we had a different director when we first started, a wonderful director, and she was fired after the first week, and it was a very Hollywood moment because the studio came and they stood at lunch on a table and announced to everyone how awful this director was and that they were firing her. It was just brutal. So all the actors got together and went to a restaurant to go talk about wondering if we were fired, but we weren't, and we got a different director, and total opposite. The first director was dramatic, really, more touching. Second director, Savage Steve Holland, was like from cartoons, so it was very silly.
He's a wild man. He's great. He's just better than his reputation. He's got this infectious, fun kind of just humorous energy, as they say. He's a practical joker, and he's great.
But we had a lot of fun together. That's a really nice cast, and they just did a screening of that, well, last year, at the Beverly Theater on Beverly that Quentin Tarantino owns. They did a screening of it.
Oh, nice. And with kind of a opposite role almost, but with 30-something and Flying Blind. And how were those projects for you?
Well, 30-something came after Biloxi Blues. When I did Biloxi Blues with Mike Nichols and Neil Simon, my agent called me to tell me I would either never work again or I would only ever play characters like the one I played in Biloxi Blues. So I say that to say that you never really know, because 30-something I played the younger lover. Melanie Mayron had heard that I was a member of the Actors Studio, and she, wanted to work with me. And so we had a very steamy on-set relationship, on-camera relationship. And so it was totally different from Biloxi Blues. Flying Blind, that was a lot of fun. I wish it had been given more support, but that was with Taya Leone, and she and I also, for some reason, our characters were always hopping into bed, and so it was very steamy at times. And but again, if you look at Biloxi Blues, you don't think that's ever going to happen to that actor. That's me, who played Epstein.
Are there two Arnold Epsteins in this company?
No, Sergeant.
Just give me one goddamn ho.
Ho.
Do I make myself clear, Epstein?
Ho.
So you can play all different kinds of things. And I think that really came from starting off in New York, playing so many different plays. I played with so many different characters. And I really, when I got to LA, I did not let people tell me that I could or couldn't do something in terms of the work, in terms of a character. If I believed that I could do it, then I wanted to do it. I wanted to find my way in, as they say.
Oh, thank you.
That you must really hate yourself to be with a guy like me.
Look, Lee, I don't know how to...
All I know is that no one's watching, Melissa. No one cares.